For all you out there electronically, physically, thank you so much for joining us in 2024. We are in January. This is our first presentation session for the Advocacy and Empowerment Program, supported by Cayenne Wellness and produced by San Francisco Sickle Cell Anemia Awareness of San Francisco. We have a return guest that's going to provide us information about how to handle yourself in sickle cell emergencies, and I'm going to leave the floor to her. Wanda, you have the mic.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Well, I'm going to talk to you today about really visits to the emergency room and preparing yourself to go there. For those of you dealing with sickle cell warriors, I'm sure you already have an awareness of basically what you need to do. I'm going to share with you a little bit about my story. I'm 74 years old, looking forward to 75 this year. And when I grew up in Louisiana, living with my mother and grandmother and my sister and a cousin, we all lived together, a whole bunch of women in the house. And I had no idea I had sickle cell, my family, my mom, my grandmother, no idea. And my grandmother was the one basically taking care of me whenever I had a pain crisis. And I had a pain crisis at least 2 or 3 times a month growing up as a little kid, during my elementary years for sure. And they seem to have become more intense when I was in high school, probably because I was doing more. But I would just have pain in my arms and my abdominal area, my legs. And my grandmother would just massage that area whenever I was experiencing pain. And I really relied on her to really take care of me during those times because she had just really soothing hands when it came to relieving the pain that I was experiencing. And as a little kid, a few times when I had like abdominal pain, I thought that it was because I had maybe eaten too much ice cream or, was just overdoing something, some dessert that I really liked, because my grandmother was really a great cook. And everything was made from scratch, pies, cakes, all of those wonderful things. And she had her own garden. So all of our food was grown in gardens. So everything I was eating was fresh. And I remember her, I don't know how she had, well, just the knowledge that she had, because she knew the difference between a pain crisis that I was having and when I had actually an attack of my appendix ruptured. And my grandmother knew that pain, that abdominal pain was different, and I needed to go to a hospital because growing up in Louisiana, the first 12 years of my life, I never went to a hospital. I would see the doctor periodically, but not for any, I just wasn't doing that consistently. But clearly, when my appendix ruptured, I needed to be seen at a hospital. And my grandmother, mother, they got me to the hospital. But I was always curious about how she knew the difference in that pain, because it was still me complaining about my stomach just hurting and being in so much pain. And growing up, I just kind of figured, especially when I hit like my teen years, I would want to go to a party and have a good time with my friends. My mom would let me go sometimes, and then other times, no. And she would say to me, well, Wanda, I let you go the last time. And then after the party, like the next day or two, you were sick. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not the reason I was sick, because I went to the party. But I go to the party and I would dance. I just have a good old time, right? Just no boundaries for me when I was at the party. And also being in denial. I was like a teenager in denial. It's like I just wasn't truly acknowledging the pain that I was having. I just thought my mom was being overprotective, and that really she just lived so that I wouldn't have any fun, that she just didn't want me to have fun growing up. So that's my story in terms of like the pain crises. They were frequent, and the way they were taken care of back in the day for me was just with massage. My grandmother would apply like heated pads to me, just rubbing me, and my pain crisis would last anywhere from 3 to 5 days. And I would just hurt until the pain went away with my grandmother, massaging the area and just keeping me warm. There was no pain medication. So I didn't take aspirin. Nobody was giving me anything for pain. So as a result of that, I built up like a very high tolerance for pain. I can take a whole lot of it, so that when I show up to an emergency room, I'm in serious, serious pain. Family and friends are real important as part of helping you deal with going to like an emergency room. And for those people that are private people, they don't want anybody to know what they're going through. You really need to share that with somebody. You need to have someone, and maybe a couple of someones, that you can call on when it's time for you to go to an emergency room, because you need to have someone that can advocate for you. Because when you're in pain, you aren't thinking clearly. And once people give you pain medication, usually clearly you're not in your best frame of mind. You're not as sharp as you could be. So you need to have someone with you that will indeed be an advocate for you, so you can relax and deal with the pain, deal with taking the medication that you need to take to use at that time. So being a private person is okay to a point, but there are times when it is important for you to let other people in. I'm not saying if you're in a work setting, everybody at your job needs to know your business, but somebody needs to know what's happening to you, or potentially what could be happening to you. Next slide, please. Okay. I have a backpack that I've had for years. And in that backpack, it's used only for going to the emergency room. So in that backpack, I have my ID, I have my insurance card, I have a medication list, a cell phone and a charger, a notebook and a pen. I'm old school, so I really like writing things down. So I don't go anywhere without pen and paper, even in my purse when I'm just traveling. And maybe part of that comes from being like a teacher also. I was a high school teacher, so paper and pencil, I just love. So it's real important that you have all of these things with you when you go to an emergency room. Your identification, your medical cards, and a list of medications. I have a number of medications that I take. Not all are prescription. They're vitamins and things like that that I also take. And I'm not always able to rattle off the entire list of 10, 12 things that I'm taking on a daily basis. So having all of those things written out, and you need to be conscious of updating that list, because let's say you're taking a high blood pressure medication. The one that they started you out on is not one that you're using now. They made a change. So you need to make sure that that medication list is up to date. And I just keep a copy in the backpack so that when it's time to go to the ER, all I have to do is say to my husband, "Oh, can you grab my backpack?" And he knows which one is the emergency room one, because I have several other backpacks. But you want to be sure that you have all of the things that are necessary for you pre-packed in that backpack. Now, my cell phone and charger, I keep a charger in the backpack that fits whatever phone I have currently. I'm old school. I still have like an Android, but I have had to change, you know, when the battery dies, and it's more expensive to get another battery than to just get a new phone. So it's important that you have that with you. Notebook and pen, as I said, I'm old school, so I just keep that in my backpack, because when someone comes into the emergency room, any staff, to see me, to give me medication, to clean the room, to do whatever, I make a note of the people that I'm having encounter with. And if they have badges that are turned around so that I can't really see the name, I will ask them to turn it around so that I can see it. And then I will make note. Another thing that I noticed is when you're in the ER and people see you writing down things, staff people that are taking care of you, they pay extra attention to what it is they're doing, because they don't know what you're writing. And once you are taking notes, that helps you, because you're not going to always remember things. And also, by having a person with you, if you're in a position where you can't write those notes, you can't do that, having someone else do it for you is real important. And it may be that people are putting the notes in their phone. That's fine. But the important thing is that you're maintaining some record. I write down when the time that they gave me my first dose of medication, so that I know what time they should be returning with the second dose of medication, if I'm going to need that. So making notes about what it is like real crucial, just super, super important for you. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. I'm here now. So what? Okay. You're in that room. You've been taken into a treatment room. Most of us are anxious to get the heck on out of there. But it's real important that you are real specific about your symptoms, what's happening to you. You want to be very clear about when you started having a particular pain, where is the pain located? All of that is real crucial for people to know exactly what's happening. So don't be vague about it. Try to be as specific as you can about when things started. Like, did it start the day before and you thought it was something that you could handle because you've taken care of yourself for a few years? So basically, you know what it is you need to do. And then it also gives like staff a sense of how long have you been coping with this particular pain? You know, you didn't just wake up that morning with it and decide you were going to come the minute your eyes open. You've been trying to deal with this and handle things, and now it's beyond what you can do. That is why you're in the emergency room. You want to let them know what things you've taken to deal with and cope with that pain. What it was you took, and when did you last take it? We always want to know, well, how long am I going to be here? You know, how long. You want to know, number one, when is the doctor going to come in and see me? When I was a younger woman and going into the emergency room, I felt like, you know, I was there almost forever before people would see me. And as I've aged, things have gotten better, like a heck of a lot better for me in terms of going to the emergency room. It's real important in terms of our behavior and deportment when we go into the emergency room. These are people, I need something from you. So it's not going to help me to piss you off. I already am dealing with, what's going on with me. So I don't need any extra stress. I recall once I worked for the school district in Hayward before I retired. I had a school board meeting that didn't end until like 11 o'clock that night. It started at 6 o'clock in the evening. I had a presentation to do. So I was dressed in a suit and everything. And I was in pain that day when I went to work. And I'd taken pain medication to help me get through the day, to get through the presentation that night. So at the end of my presentation, when I left the boardroom at like 11:30 that night, I went straight to the emergency room. And when I got to the emergency room, the woman asked me if anyone was with me. And I said, well, no. And she said, well, I'm sorry. We can't give you any pain medication because we can't have you drive away from here. And I said, it isn't my intent to get pain medication and just leave. I would stay. And she said, well, I'm sorry, unless someone is here with you, we can't give you any medication. And I'm basically saying to them, the reason I didn't bother anybody, it's late at night and I just didn't want to bother anybody. So I'm here. But she would not let me be seen until I had to call and have a friend come to the emergency room before they would give me any treatment. I was definitely upset with that. So, but again, I was there alone, so I had to deal with it. And fortunately, I had a friend that was available to get up and drive down and come and be there with me. And I ended up getting admitted to the hospital, so it wasn't like I was going to drive away anyway. So, we're asking, number one, when will the doctor be in to see me? Because you want some kind of time frame about how long it's going to be, and what is it they're going to do? What's going to be the treatment plan? Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so now we're looking at where is the expert when it's time for that difficult stick? If you're like me, it's like, I have really bad veins that play hide and seek with you, wiggle and move. So I tell them that off the top, so that if you are new to this, send in the person that's the expert at being able to draw the blood, get an IV started. Please, please, please don't, whatever you do, don't send in the person with no experience and have them try to draw the blood. That will not work for me. So I'm always asking for the person that has, a real skill when it comes to handling that. Hydration is important. So I try to make sure that I'm well hydrated before I get to the hospital. And when they're going to be giving me pain medication, I need to know what it is and how much pain medication they are giving me. I want to make sure they know what allergies I have to medication, to tapes. I'm allergic to certain tape. I want to know what tests you plan to run to deal with, what's going on with me currently. I know when it comes to, like, I had a super bad reaction to prednisone. A physician had given me some of that to deal with asthma. Well, prednisone is a widely used medication, works real well for most people. But for me, I thought I was developing like MS. I lost muscle control. I was experiencing extreme pain in my arms and my legs to the point where I had to go to the emergency room. I became diabetic, and I'd only taken the prednisone for 1 day. 1 day. So clearly that's something I'm allergic to. So when they ask, what are you allergic to? I am making sure that they know that they're not giving me anything in the prednisone family, none of that, because I'm just, very afraid of what my reaction is going to be in that kind of situation. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, where is your notebook and your notepad on your phone? Well, when it's time to be admitted, something that we really don't want to have to deal with, but it's absolutely necessary. It's just real crucial that when it's time and you really have to stay, you're admitted, you just have to deal with that. And again, we're trying to look at making sure we are aware of who's providing services to us when we are in the emergency room. You want to make sure you have the names of the people doing good things for you, as well as those people that are not doing good things. So you want to make sure you have an awareness of who's there, who's caring for you. And sometimes when we're in the emergency room, it's like a long wait, and they're like, oh, well, when we have a bed, we'll put you in it. There are times when people, I've seen them on gurneys in the hallway, waiting for sometimes 2 or 3 days in that situation because a bed is not available on one of the floors. But again, this is where having someone with you comes in handy, because that person can stay on top of the situation, asking, when is that room going to be ready? When will my wife, my friend, my sister be able to be placed in a particular room? Because you want to be in a situation where you're more comfortable. And when it comes to medication, you can refuse to take certain things. If you don't believe that it's in your best interest, then you can indeed refuse that. But again, there's always a particular way to refuse things. You want to always be, polite. You can be direct. I am a very direct person. But again, I'm trying not to piss you off, because again, you have a service to provide me with that I need. So I want to keep you on my side. So I'm going to be doing all that I can to stay in your good graces for the most part. Okay, next slide. Okay. The discharge home. Okay. Let's review the medication list, the instructions. Like when you're getting ready to go home, you want to go home when you are in a position to really care for yourself. And every hospital has a social worker, and you need to be in touch with that person if you feel you're going to need like in-home support when you get home. So that person can work with you and talk with you to plan out what it is you're going to need. It may be certain equipment you're going to need to have at home. I needed a wheelchair after I had outpatient surgery on my head. So all of the things that you're going to need when you are home, that social worker can help plan those things out for you. So you will need to ask for that person while you are still like an inpatient. And any concerns that you have, those things need to be addressed before you leave the hospital. If they're telling you they want you to start taking a certain medication, you need to know what that is, what are some potential side effects. So whatever doctor is making that recommendation for you, and these days, most people have hospitalists, your regular physician that you see, your primary care person outside of the hospital is not that person coming in to care for you. Most of the time it's a hospitalist. And I don't take medication in the hospital that they give me if the doctor hasn't had a discussion with me about that ahead of time. And if that's something you want me to take when I go home, we need to have had a discussion about that so that I'm clear about, is this something I'm going to take just for a week or two or a month? Is this something I'm going to be on for the rest of my life? What are the potential side effects of all of this? I need to know all of that prior to taking the medication. So having a conversation with people about what your needs are is real crucial. And again, having a support person there with you when you are being discharged is real important, because having another person hear what's being said is very crucial. Because even though you're being discharged, you're feeling better than when you arrived, but we aren't always as clear about things as we could be. So having an extra pair of ears is always a good thing. Surveys. Whenever you are in the hospital, usually once you've been discharged, the next day somebody will call to find out how you're doing. And to me, that's the mark of a good hospital. It's super crucial that, someone is really, really paying close attention to you, and they're going to follow up once you leave the hospital. One of the other things is, once you leave the hospital, within usually 4 or 5 days, you will receive a written survey in the mail. I can't say to you enough how crucial it is that you fill out that written survey. It is real crucial that you actually fill it out. And that's why having your notes either on your phone or in a notebook is real crucial, because you will have written down the names of the nurses that you saw, other staff people, and the kind of service that they gave you. And it's real important when you're filling out that survey. It's good when you can write down the name of, Mary Jones helped me. She was just very attentive. She came back and checked to see how I was doing. Like every 20 minutes, somebody was in and asking me, what I needed. So writing down the names of those people that paid attention to you, gave you good service, gave you bad service, is real crucial. Whenever I send the surveys back, I sign them. You can, do it anonymously if you like, but I don't have a problem telling folks who I am. And I recall once I had gone to the hospital, had a stay, well, probably several different stays on different occasions, but I had become an inpatient, And one of the nurses saw me and she said, "Oh, we know who you are." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know who I am. You have my chart in front of you. That's why you know who I am." And she said, "No, we know that you fill out the surveys." And they come back and talk to us about them. Well, I just thought those surveys went to some corporate office somewhere. And, people, reviewed them maybe. But I had no idea that they actually came back and talked specifically to the staff about the surveys. So that was even more incentive for me once I was hospitalized to make sure that I was indeed completing the surveys and, writing down the names of people and giving as much detail as possible because it pays off. When I go to the hospital, I get excellent treatment. I assumed it was because of my age, but not totally. But it is because I fill out those surveys, and you have to put things in writing. If you have a complaint, it's not enough to just verbally, kind of go through that with people, but you really, really need to put things in writing, because that's when people pay attention to them, when you put things in writing. And I'm going to ask my husband to close the door so we don't have a whole lot of extra noise. Okay. All right, we can move to the next slide, Antoine. Okay, this is the part about if you want to complain about something. We don't want the police to be called on us. So it's important, again, for us not to be what I call inappropriate, because cussing people out is not going to get you what you want. But there are people that you can complain to when you are, let's say you're inpatient in a room and you need it, they haven't brought your medication when they need to. You ring the buzzer for somebody to come. They're taking their good, sweet time about coming. You can call for the charge nurse and complain directly to her about what is indeed going on. I remember once when I was working as a social work assistant, I went to the hospital to visit with a patient, a sickle cell patient. And so when I went in to see him, he said that, they hadn't brought his medication. And I said, "Oh, well, let me go tell them right now." And he said, "I want to ring the buzzer so you can see how long it actually takes them to just respond to coming here." Because initially, when you ring the buzzer, somebody will pick up on the phone, and they did that. And I did what he said. I just waited in the room with him, and he was the one that, placed the call. And it was like more than 25 minutes before anybody came to the room. And so I wrote that up and I complained about it. And the charge nurse actually ended up getting in trouble. And so people were upset with me. And I'm like, I don't care. You needed to have handled this differently than what you did. Every hospital has a patient relations person. And sometimes they're referred to as an ombudsman. And that person is responsible for taking your complaint. And what I noticed is that sometimes what people will do is they'll talk to you about your complaint, but they're not encouraging you to put anything in writing. And if you never put it in writing, it's like it didn't happen. And they don't really have to respond, or they can just say anything to you and not really take care of the issue. But once you put something in writing, it has to be dealt with. They have to respond. So it's real crucial that you do that, and that you not be discouraged or let anyone discourage you from putting a complaint in writing. There's a California medical board that all physicians have to answer to. So you want to make sure you have that number so you can make a formal complaint if you feel that, you have really been mistreated. But again, if you don't put it in writing, it's like it doesn't exist. It wasn't a big deal if you never put it in writing. Well, this will conclude my presentation, and I'd like to, at this time, answer any questions that you have, because I find that that is indeed the best way for you to get what you need.
The first thing I wanted to actually ask is, a lot of people happen to find themselves speaking on the now opposed to the pre and post. So what I just wanted to make sure for folks out there that are just diving into the space of understanding how to prepare themselves for their crises, what would you say or give a breakdown to anybody listening of the pre-process of identifying their pain and how they can prepare themselves at that point in time?
Okay, you're talking about at the onset of your pain.
Yes, you had mentioned earlier on in your presentation that I would have, if you have a pain a day before, a couple of days before, how can people help themselves at that point so that if they get to that ER situation, they don't have somebody and they're just in immense pain and they really can't focus on helping you, they at least have something written down possibly, or something pre-established outside of the medical list.
Okay. Well, it could be different for everyone, how you cope and how you deal with your pain. But for me, at the onset is making sure, have I been drinking enough water today? Do I need to actually go and lay my butt down? Because sometimes it's a situation like that. I find that if I go and lay down and rest, that will help me avert a real serious pain crisis if I do it at the onset, if I make sure I'm staying hydrated. So those are the pre kinds of things, or applying like a heating pad, taking a warm bath, those are all steps that you can take early on in the pain crisis.
Next question that I wanted to ask, when you are, how long do you think it took you to understand what you might have been dealing with, every situation where you entered the ER, to realize what you needed to put down maybe on your medical list, or just having things in a prepared backpack? How long did that take you?
How long did it take me?
Yeah, was it like several visits? Did you know right away when you started really taking on this process of being prepared, or did it take you several different situations that, you know what, I realize that these people aren't prepared for me, so I've got to prepare myself? Because some folks may not necessarily be in that state yet and not realize how prepared they need to be.
Well, I think that for me, because I'm relatively organized, just having been to the emergency room, over the years, several times, what it is they're going to ask you. So thinking about what it is they're going to ask me, that is what prompted me to put the backpack together. The other part of it was, when I'm in pain and in a crisis and I need to go, I don't have time to go around gathering up the things that I need. One of the other things that I didn't mention that I have in the backpack is I have lipstick in the backpack and I have a wig in the backpack, because one time when I was inpatient, an older lady came in, and this was during the time when you shared a room with other people, right? So she came in and I thought, ooh, she's an older lady, but that woman is looking really nice. She don't even really look sick. And I noticed that she had on lipstick. And So she told me, she said, "Oh no, baby, I don't go nowhere without my lipstick." And lipstick really kind of, it makes you look, it perks you up. It makes you look better than you may be feeling. So I put a tube of lipstick in that backpack that I keep in the backpack. And back in the day, I wasn't wearing my hair short and natural. So it may be, once you're sick and you start sweating, your hair is all crazy looking.
Mhm.
So I would put a wig in the backpack. And I remember once I had been laying in the bed in the hospital. I was sick and looking crazy. And then I remembered I had a wig in the backpack. And I would always get up and try to walk the floor the minute I was feeling, better. I had enough strength to do that. And I had my little wig on. And the doctor came in the room and it was like, he didn't know who I was. I was looking so much better. Amazing what a wig and lipstick will do.
Beautiful. I get it. Okay, that's what's up. A couple more questions preliminary to the hospital portion. With the social worker, understanding that person, how does somebody know that's new or new to this situation of trying to understand this information, of being prepared? When are they assess that person? Do they have to call for that particular person, or have they developed a relationship beforehand of a specific social worker that works in that area before? How did that social worker work in this space through the connection?
Well, it's a good hospital with good medical staff. If they see that that's a need you have, they make sure the social worker comes to visit you. You shouldn't have to ask, but you may need to ask, because people don't always make available to you all of the things that you are entitled to. So if you feel there's something you need, you just ask the nurse to get in touch with the social worker on that floor in that unit, so that then you ask for her. Just ask for it. All they can do is say no, or we don't have one. But everybody, I mean, there are medical social workers in the hospitals, but most people wouldn't know that. You wouldn't just know that.
Got it. Okay. Then the last thing before I go into some of the other questions that are more towards the point when you get to the ER, the last question I was thinking about myself personally is that person that you have that doesn't allow you to go through the situation alone and is going to join you. How does that, what would you suggest, or how do we help prepare that person in the pre-process? For example, if let's say because I have the trait, but let's say I have the disease and I'm realizing today I'm having a slight pain somewhere and it's kind of magnifying as we go through the rest of the day. Do I tell that partner then and there, hey, look, just be prepared. There might be a chance that I might feel a need to go to the hospital. How do we help prompt that person to be prepared to help us?
Well, if it's a person that knows you pretty well, they may be able to look at you and tell that you're not doing as well as you think you are. Because I used to try to conceal my pain from my mother, because I didn't want people to be worried and all that kind of stuff, right? And sometimes she would look at me and she would say, "Wanda, you're sick. What's wrong? Why?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not." Well, what was giving me away were the jaundiced eyes. I
Uh,
didn't realize for the longest that my eyes turned yellow. That, when they're looking all yellow, that's a sign you're not well.
mm,
So no matter what was coming out of my mouth, she saw those jaundiced eyes, and that was, a dead giveaway. So letting the person know ahead of time, even let's say you're at work and you're not feeling well,
mhm.
that's why I'm saying it's important for you to have at least one person in those important settings where you are on any kind of regular basis to know number one, that you do have sickle cell. I had a guy tell me once, he thought because my eyes were jaundiced most of the time when I was younger, that they were jaundiced because I was smoking weed. I don't even smoke cigarettes. I wasn't smoking anything. And this was back in the day before it was legal. You know, I'm
Oh
74
my
years old. So we're
God.
talking like, 100 years ago, practically.
Right.
But it was all because my eyes were jaundiced. That's what he
Mm,
thought. He said,
I
"Oh, this
see.
girl, she getting high all the time. Look at them eyes, right?"
Lord have mercy.
And they were big eyes back in the day. The eyelids have drooped now. But again, it's letting people know as soon as possible, that you're not feeling well and you may need to go to the hospital.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna leave her to let me know if she wants me to ask this question or not. So Dinah had a question earlier around the time when you had first gone through the backpack, talked about speaking notes. Dinah, do you want to ask the question yourself? The mic could be yours, or I could ask it for you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, Anton, go ahead. Good morning, everyone. You can go ahead and continue, Anton.
Okay, so the question is, if taking notes while in the ER and hospital staff asked why or what's inside the notes, how much transparency is required to be disclosed?
That's your personal business. You don't have to tell them anything. You could just simply say, I'm just taking notes about my visit today. I mean, you don't have any requirement to share anything. It's your notebook. It's your phone. You're taking notes for you. And I mean, you can disclose as much as you want to. There's no requirement. You're not working in the hospital. And even if you were an employee, you're a patient at this point. So you don't have any requirement to disclose, what you're writing.
Okay. Next question that I wanted to ask, actually, before I ask this next question from Nancy, now that we're getting into the space where you are at ER, you had mentioned that because there's certain people that might be new to the adult process compared to those that have gone through this for the past 15 to 20 years and just really know to a T. Would you say, because this is actually going to be supered on the recording, what are some normal questions that you might be asked from somebody in the ER about what you're dealing with? Do you have like an idea of those types of questions? Because we want to make sure that folks that are really new to this can be prepared. And if they want to have prompts because they can't necessarily think well, speak well, or have anybody there, they can't speak it clearly, they have something written down and they can let somebody else read it for them if they have a question in that space. So like if you were to look at a website and what are normal Q&As, what would be questions that somebody asked you?
One of the first things is, when did the pain start? Where is it? What did you take for it? Those are like the initial things that they're going to ask. When did this start? What did you take? Where is the pain? What is the frequency? What kind of pain is it? Is it sharp? Is it stabbing? Is it dull? How long does it last? When it occurs? Are you in pain now? Things like that. Those are the main things that they're going to be trying to get to.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Question for you from Nancy. We know that there's a social worker that's available for you if there is good healthcare. Nancy, you had a question. Would you like to ask it yourself or can I ask it for you?
You need to unmute yourself.
Let me unmute you, love. You can unmute. There you go.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, everyone. It's good afternoon. Yeah, it's nice to see all of you. I actually wrote two questions, but they're not questions, they're statements that I would like to make. One of them the first one has to do with selecting the ER in the first place. There are many times where you drive past a hospital. I'll talk about the hospital that I can drive past pretty easily, UCLA. And you think, oh boy, UCLA, great big hospital, it gets lots of publicity. This ought to be great. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Sometimes even the biggest, most popular hospitals do not have effective ER programs. They don't have the right kinds of doctors on call. All of these things that you talk about may not even be available because they simply don't know. And quite frankly, some of them, there's just a lot of racial bias. I'll just be honest. You come in with or without the wig, Wanda. You come in and you might not be treated very well. So here's my suggestions. Network with close friends and family. Talk about what hospital people have gone to and where they've had a good reception, good treatment. Avoid an ambulance if you can. Why? Because ambulances take you to the closest hospital. My closest hospital would be UCLA. The reason why I'm down on UCLA, I don't know about all of their positive things. I only know about two negative things. And one of them was when a friend of mine went there. The nurse was trying to convince her she had been admitted to the hospital and was going into a room. A nurse tried to get her to change into her hospital outfit, and get into bed. And she was in a lot of pain, and she continued to say, wait a minute, can you just give me a minute? The exchange continued until the nurse decided that calling security was the best thing to do for her. And the security guard comes up and says, what do you expect me to do? Now, this is on a woman in her early 50s, a small woman that was just in a lot of pain, and the nurse didn't know how to deal effectively with that to help her get her into bed. So that was UCLA. They may have been great for everybody else, but because I know that about that particular person, I'm leery. And so you just have to be careful. If you call an ambulance, they will take you to the closest hospital. My grandson, who many of you know, I'm an advocate because of my grandson, was home alone. Well, he was actually home with his sister, who happens to be autistic, so she doesn't drive. She's good with the phone, though. She texted her mom, Joseph's going to the hospital, so she did that well. But he went to a hospital in up near where they live in the Saugus area that the ambulance took him to, that did not know one single thing about sickle cell disease. And eventually his mother had to come, bail him out against medical advice, and take him. Now he's still sick, can hardly walk, doubled over in pain, to take him to a hospital that she knew would treat him effectively. So I'm just saying, network with your friends to find out what works and what doesn't. Avoid an ambulance if you can, and network with close friends so that you were talking about kids who are into the adult situation for the first time. They may be living with a friend. They may be on a campus. They may be a number of places away from close family, and they may be embarrassed and not share their sickle cell story with a close friend, so they end up with nobody that they can trust. And I hate to say that it's a shame. It's trying to be bigger and better. It's trying not to admit that you have a chronic illness, but that's a key piece of this. And many times our young adults have to go to the ER, and they're there by themselves because they have not shared with family and friends. So that's my long story on this, but I've been doing this for 20 some years now. So I've developed some insight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I understand, Wanda, that everybody's body is going to take something differently based on whether it's pain medication or it's just supplements and things of that nature. One of the questions that was asked by Lawrence, I believe I said that correctly, Finister, have you had experience with necrosis that you can share?
Yes. When I was 30 years old, I think it was, I had I have necrosis of my left hip, and I had an aseptic necrosis of my left shoulder. So I ended up having to have surgery on my shoulder. And then I had on my left hip what was called a core biopsy, where they just drill into the bone to aerate it so that the blood circulates better. So I've never had to have a hip replacement. And I had that process in my hip done for the first time, I think when I was like 25 or 30. And then 10 years later, I started having like really severe pain again. And the doctor at that time said, well, we could try doing that pouring again. And so we did it again. And I got another 20 years out of it. And so at this point, I'm like 74. I do have problems with my hip. I have problems with my back. But what I started doing was walking. I walked like 2 to 4 miles, 5 days a week. And I also see what's called an osteopath. That's a doctor who does manipulations to help your body heal itself. And no insurance really pays for it. But because they are medical doctors, my insurance will reimburse me half of the fee. Her fee is like $250. But this is not somebody you're seeing for 15 minutes. She has me in her office for like an hour, and she works on my body for a good 50 minutes, doing gentle manipulations. I would compare it to kind of like a chiropractor, but it's not the same as what a chiropractor would do. So I believe in alternative medicine. I've done acupuncture also. So those are things that have helped me to this point avoid having like a major surgery. But clearly I have been dealing with aseptic necrosis in my hips and my shoulders.
So I wanted to follow up with the process of being an ER. I understand that there was some commentary in your presentation where you testified that now that you're older and have gone through a lot more experiences dealing with this, a lot of times that comes with a certain level of respect from somebody that might be handling you at that time. For those that are in a much newer phase of this process as an adult, what would you suggest, or could you give us an average time that somebody should be possibly expecting help when they get there, opposed to when they need to start asking for help? And then, because you have that prompt of when is my room ready? So I'm thinking, if I'm in the ER and I'm thinking to myself, okay, 15 minutes has passed, 5 minutes has passed, 10 minutes has passed. When should I start? When are those benchmarks where I should start making this statement or asking for this kind of information? Do you have those available?
Well,
On average, it could be an average too.
Well, when you arrive, you assess, number one, what time of day or night are you going to the emergency room? Is the room crowded when you get there? And so, I mean, you look at that, those kinds of things too. If you go into the emergency room and you see 20 people already sitting there, I mean, it's going to be a minute, right? But I'm the kind, I'm going to be asking within like 15 minutes of me walking in, if you don't see me, because usually when you go in and you sign in, people may tell you, oh, somebody will be with you right away. But again, it's assessing who's already in the room. If it's a crowded situation and it's a holiday, like one time I went to the ER and I waited like 5 hours. But it was a holiday weekend. I went like on a 4th of July weekend, so I'm assuming more of the ER staff was out enjoying themselves too.
Sure.
And the time of day that I went, it was probably like about 1 or 2 in the afternoon when I showed up there. So I had a long wait, and I expected that it was going to be like that. But again, I would still go up to the counter and say, now, when do you think somebody will be able to see me? And then you look at like once, you know, the people are in the room, are they taking people that came in after you?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Cause you know, I'm quick to go up and say, oh, no, I was here before so-and-so. Why are you seeing them now? So those are all questions and things that you get into. And again, you know, you have to balance out because you don't want people to like not see you or, you know, really put you on hold and all of that. You don't have a whole lot of control over that, but you know, you do what you can and you ask questions when you feel you need to ask the questions.
Carolyn? Unmute.
So there's it's called EDSC3, and under the umbrella of the American College of Emergency Physicians, and they realize the issues that are taking place. They've put together a plan, and their goal is to educate other emergency physicians. Jeffrey Glassberg, an article that I think everyone should read, states that evidence-based, you should be seen within the first 60 minutes, period. Now, I understand that it can be crowded. I understand that it does depend upon the time of day. I'm just sharing with you all what evidence-based treatment and management looks like. And there are people out there who are pushing for that. So evidence-based management, unfortunately, doesn't mean that it's the law. It means that it's recommended. And unfortunately, the hospital personnel, they don't abide by what's recommended. But for you all, because you're at this A&E, for you to be empowered with education within 60 minutes. And then Jeffrey Glassberg says, then you should also be assessed every 15 to 30, particularly if they're not going to give you the medication that you asked for, the amount. Oftentimes they give you far less. If you're used to getting 2 or 3 milligrams and they're only giving you, hear me now, 0.4 over the whole hour, that's utterly ridiculous. So if they're going to give you less, that's a whole nother topic, then they should be assessing you more frequently. So I'm just letting you know that Jeffrey Glassberg out of New York, wonderful article. I constantly share with everyone to just read it and to share it, because he outlines the best way to be able to manage so that you can get yourself up and out. And I would share with the personnel that if you don't want me to be in here twice as long, I need to be seen. I need to be assessed. This is what I normally take. And it is counterintuitive to start off with 0.5 or 0.4 and then start working your way up. It is better, as everybody knows here, preaching to the choir, to get what I normally get and then to start tapering down. Otherwise, what's going to wind up happening is I'm going to be here much longer than necessary. So the question that came up was in terms of how long should you expect? I'm only sharing with you all that he writes it should be in the hour. But I understand, and I even say sometimes it's okay to put me in the hallway because you just want to be seen. You just want that first dose of medication
Yes.
because everybody has already been at home trying to manage. So by the time you get there, it isn't the first hour, it's probably the ninth hour. It may have been a day. So now it's already the 25th hour. So this waiting another 5 hours is ridiculous. I also just want to say in tandem to that, that's why having another person there with you is good, but we all know people are busy, it may be challenging. But nowadays, because of COVID, you can do it via phone. And so there are people there that can advocate for you over the phone,
Nice.
including your doctor, or depending upon which agency that you're working with, people can actually advocate on your behalf with your permission to the ER doc. And, you know, I don't want to say it's 50-50. I want to say it's about 80-20. On average, most of them will listen. Sometimes they're just stubborn. They don't want to hear anything. They've already made up their mind. And in that case, you all, when that happens, this happened when we were advocating for someone. You can hear the warrior screaming in the background. The doctor said, "Your patient is not in pain."
Wow.
I said, "Oh my gosh. So what has to happen? A bone dislocated or what?" And it was in the best interest of that patient to leave. And so we got them an Uber to take them to another hospital. It wasn't going to go well. If the
Yeah.
person didn't believe you, it's not going to go well. And so there are times that you may need to up and go to another hospital. And that next hospital did listen. And that next hospital did give the person what they needed.
Just really quickly, I wanted Nadina to add, Nadina has done an incredible job with patients with SCAASF in Northern California to be on the phone and provide this same thing. Nadina, do you have an idea percentage-wise of what you have been capable of doing per conversation to advocate for somebody and getting them that resource via phone? Is it 50-50? Is it 80-20? Is it 70-30? What is your experience?
My experience is for advocating for clients has gone well, I must say, and I'm not certain why. Maybe it's my delivery, but I would say probably 70-30. And I was on the phone most of the time, but I was consistent about it, and I was, asking the charge for the charge nurse. I mean, because there are various people that do various things. And not all the nurses take care of one client. So, but for the most part, my interaction was always good, because they had the clients in very bad positions and being in a room with someone else who had a particular condition that the person with sickle cell didn't need to be near this person because of her condition. And they had her in the room with them, and I had her moved out of there because they were telling her that she had to use the bathroom down the hall. So she's supposed to get up and wheel down the hall because they were using the bathroom for this woman for whatever process or procedure that she needed for whatever her condition was. So they told the sickle cell warrior that she had to go down the hallway. And I said, excuse me, no, that's not going to happen. So yeah, I don't know, maybe being forceful and just not necessarily being crazy, but professional, but being intent about what you're saying. And they'll start to do some things, and then don't let me have to show up there. Unfortunately, this particular person was in Sacramento, so I couldn't get there, but they did take care of her, according to what we were requesting, what the patient needed, the sickle cell patient needed. They were responding. They just be taking their own time, and hey, you need to expedite this, just like starting with the medication with a low dose and working your way up. That's crazy. But yeah, my experiences have been good. And I appreciate that because, like I said, some of them I can't get to, but I always let them know that if it's, hey, I'm just a phone call away. So, yeah.
So let that be just, for those that are listening in this process, do your best if you're dealing with sickle cell disease and you're realizing that crises are happening much more often. Please make sure that you go to your phone and you put in your immediate contacts, folks that you can press a number and dial, and it immediately dials them, those people that are going to be available for you to help you if you have a situation where they need to speak over the phone and they can't be with you in person at your emergency. So make sure that you do that. I wanted to make sure that I got to Leanne. I would like for her to unmute her mic, just because, like we talked about, this is a source of this platform is a source for people to get resources and just understand intangibles. So Leanne, could you unmute yourself and just advise us of the comment that you made in the chat box? And if you'd like to elaborate on that, that'd be great. It's the one where you said, yes, if you refer.
Yes. Oh, a bit. Okay. A bit below, not my really long one.
Yeah.
Yes, that's something that, so at our center, we have a combination of, we're an HTC and as well as working with, non-malignant heme as well. And this is something that we've run into with our EDs, and something that I really appreciate that has been shared is, of the importance of going to a place in which you will be received. Because unfortunately, that's something that we run into as well in working with different EDs as well as urgent care as to what that care looks like. And so that's something that we're working with our own leadership on, is to figure out how it is that we can better improve that in our own hospital here in Salt Lake. But absolutely referring, calling ahead, as you all said, I think is of great importance, that if you do have that contact within the hospital, we found that to have better success if you contact one of our nurse coordinators, even social work, hematologists on call to help speak directly provider to provider. Because I think at times, despite best intentions, the confusion that can come along with some of the frontline staff that we have, and not necessarily understanding the gravity of a diagnosis of a disease state that maybe somebody with medical training or who works closely alongside providers maybe would, has been and continues to be a barrier, unfortunately. So I think all of what you shared is really just remarkably invaluable in referring to these things, and asking if it is possible to speak with a provider and or have the possibility to connect with a provider contact who can contact a provider directly, inside or outside of the hospital, to also help advocate, in addition to those people who know and love you well, to be able to show up in those ways practically too.
Right. And one thing I wanted to piggyback, if we can keep you there, obviously this is going to be recorded. So what's going to happen in the process is we're going to have these supers underneath people's Q&A. At the Q&A portion where people speak, we'll have supers underneath them to just give the audience an opportunity to write it down and see it visually. You had mentioned about referring to existing policy or practice to a member of the frontline staff. Is there a website that we need to know of that we can go to understand these particular policies, so that we can have these possibly jotted down in our notepad for an easy prompt?
Yeah, I think what's been mentioned is what we've referred patient families to. And I would have to look, but I think what SCDAAS put out as well is also helpful. I think fortunately, unfortunately, and this is very much in some of our experience, but what has landed the most here in Utah is some of that provider to provider contact, sometimes even than what does exist for patient, or as a result of the remarkably hard work of patient organizations, in part despite what is remarkably well documented of historical acts of racism and other forms of marginalization. But frankly, too, just provider education is huge for us here in Utah, because our population here, folks with disease. I apologize off the top of my head, remember folks with trait as well. And like, in terms of just to encompass the entire population, we only sit at around like 50, 60 patient families. So there's also just that remarkable lack of knowledge that exists there as well between providers. And so having someone on your care team that can serve as that connection has continued to be just incredibly been really a lifeline for our families, it seems.
I'd like to piggyback on what Leanne just said. I'd forgotten that in terms of like my primary care physician, when I was going to the emergency room, I would always call them first and ask them to call the ER and say that I was coming. That does make a difference. You're muted, Antoine.
I wanted to bring back Dinah. There was something that you had mentioned that I would like for you to actually, that might have actually been Leanne that expressed that. Yeah, the long paragraph. Dinah, if you don't mind, if she's still on here, can you just give us a little bit of your background and your thought about some of the information that's been expressed and anything that you may be able to add for our viewers? Dinah, you still there? Oh, okay. She may not necessarily be there. I think she might be away from the computer. Okay. I wanted to ask a question for Nancy. There's other good references addressing sickle cell disease publication of NASM. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that for our viewers? Well, unmute yourself. Nice.
I was able to find the book. It's huge. I know you're probably looking at it like it's in a mirror, but it's called Addressing Sickle Cell Disease. You can see it's huge, and it's the result of committee work with patients, doctors, nurses, and so forth. It's just really good, and it's been out about 4 or 5 years now. But it talks about a number of the things that we've discussed, the kinds of things that need to be done in the emergency room, the kinds of things that need to be done by your general physician, your primary care physician. For a while, there was a whole thing about hydroxyurea being adopted by NIH, I believe, and yet there were a lot of doctors that were not using it, and using it really helps cut down on the number of crises that people have, and yet there were some doctors that were fearful of it. So it's just good to go through it, and I actually bought it, and I'm glad I did, because I wouldn't want to have 500 pages loose or sticking around in some notebook or anything, but it's just really good to always go through and make sure that you're at least that you're knowledgeable about questions that you might want to ask. I notice you didn't do this. Can you please tell me why? And that kind of thing that lets your caregiver know, lets the doctor know that, hey, you've done some reading. You know a little bit about what should be happening in the ER. And so those are the things that I think is really critical. Unfortunately, I like watching medical shows, and there's one about a real hospital in New York, and they talk about sickle cell treatment, and they're wrong. And it's a show that goes out, and a patient comes in on the show into the ER having a crisis, and the doctor thinks that there is some blood test that will let people know whether or not a person is having a crisis. There isn't. But in this episode of the show, she very calmly explains to the person why she can't give him any medication because his blood test shows he's not really having a crisis. That's completely wrong. It's wrong-headed. And yet it's going out, and trust me, there will be people who will look at that and say, oh yeah, well, I saw that on that television show, and it's wrong. So yeah, this is a good book.
Leanne, really quickly.
I just want to say, let me stop you one
Go ahead,
second.
go
I'll
ahead.
say, this is a good one too. Can you see that? It's with
You got to
her.
unblur your for us to see it. You got to unblur your screen.
Well, if I'm in the screen.
No, because it's just going to highlight just the face. If
Okay,
you,
but it's called sickle cell disease, and it's got a picture of Hertz Nazir's in the corner. I don't know if anybody has seen this, but so I got to unblur. How do I do that, Antoine?
you just go to your you go to your video. Go to your video tab, and then you just click on the arrow, and then it'll allow you to do a pop-up screen and say, yeah, there you go.
Perfect.
Yeah, this one is a good one too. So yeah, because I got them both, Nancy. I got the one you just showed, and then I just got this one. So I haven't. Somebody was telling me about this. Matter of fact, it was Stephanie Starr, and she was telling me what a good book this was. So I went on ahead and purchased it. It is kind of expensive.
Who's publishing it?
It's
Hurts.
Mark T. Gladwin. Can you see
Okay.
that?
You can write it in the chat, Nadina. Can you write that in the chat just so
Sure.
that people have it? Thank you so much for the share. Leanne, can we go back to you really quickly? You had a question at the end of the paragraph that you wrote about how do you recommend referrals respective. Could you ask that question again, please?
Yeah, absolutely. A bit in my novel there. So part of the context that's there is, which I appreciate. Often we have our palliative care team that's involved and helps with some of the pain management of some of our patient families. Of course, being a mental health professional, I'm a bit biased in that I'm in support of mental health services. However, to me, it feels like in ways a bit of this precarious line of how it is that we promote holistic health, much of like what's been mentioned, but also to avoid or mitigate what could feel gaslighty, to use my millennial term, or in disregard of someone's pain and really that significance to them. And so ways in which, from the provider side, from a patient perspective, and as the loved ones of not only sickle cell warriors yourselves, but as the loved ones of sickle cell warriors, how it is that you go about recommending some of these services in a compassionate way to not only mitigate what could feel gaslighty, but what was at the last question that Antoine was referring to, ways in which we can do so in a way that's respectful of the entirety of someone's lived experience and the intergenerational aspects of trauma that lend to, at least in my opinion, some of these experiences as well.
Thank you so much, love. I appreciate it. Donna, could you, so Donna, she's just came back. Would you just mind giving us a quick introduction of yourself and just some of the information that that's been reported or presented today, any feedback that you have from where you're at and where you're standing that we could use for our viewers to understand more about?
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I stepped away earlier. My name is Dinah Crease. I'm a grad student in Sacramento, a social work grad student. I also work for Highland Hospital with palliative care, and I am elated. If I can do a backflip, I would do a backflip. I feel this information is extremely beneficial, extremely helpful. The idea of positive communication, the idea of empowering yourself as you go into the hospital, and just a practice of keeping tabs and being aware of your current mental health and physical health leading into a hospital admissions. So I concur with everything. When I heard you say take a backpack, take a note, take notes, take a notepad, ask questions, I was like, yes, 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 yes. This is a way to empower people so they can have a really strong handle of how they can manage their condition and how they can feel connected to the medical practitioners and the nursing staff there in the hospital. So I'm very grateful for your share. Thank you.
So in segue to that, I wanted to ask this question to Carolyn and Wanda, especially with the older community that's experienced in this space, you guys have a certain discipline about how to prepare yourself, but then how to dictate your terms and control the environment for the newer adults that are in this space that really haven't gotten that understanding of who they are and how they can campaign for themselves properly, what do you guys think or would say or advise on how to build that discipline to help these folks be much more fortuitous with gaining information necessary when they're in the ER? Like, what do we do to get them more disciplined? What do we do to educate or coach them better?
Wow. It's just that. If we can get them, we can try to educate and coach them. If it's personal, I mean, if you know people, and I'm always open to folks being referred to me and we can talk, have conversations. Because you present as who you are, you know what I'm saying? And when you're younger, you have a certain level of knowledge and whatnot.
Yeah.
And when you present yourself in the emergency room, early on, kind of really, when I started going to the emergency room, because I knew I would be met with bias, and you shouldn't have to do this, but it was a reality if I wanted any kind of good treatment, I would try to make sure I looked okay. Like I would wear an interesting pair of earrings or something, just to present myself so folks wouldn't look at me and think, oh, who is she? You know, what, you know, is anything wrong with her really, you know? Just trying to change the narrative a little bit.
Carolyn?
So part of it is the person has to be willing. And I think that here's the generational gap. So those who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they had to figure it out. They had to figure it out because there weren't as many resources as they are now. Now with CBOs dedicated to working with adults, there's more opportunities for mentoring. And so, but the young folks have to want to be mentored first and foremost. Even if you have mentors who are willing, you have to have the mentees who are going to show up.
Yeah.
And because we are living in a different space right now, you know, and the good thing is there's different ways of showing up. I mean, you can do virtual, you can do phone calls, but the person needs to show up and not have an excuse because this is for their health and they want to be healthy. That's why there's, you know, transition programs. There's some really good ones. I know that Cayenne, we have one. It's going on now, January through June. And even though it's for people 16 to 22, guess what? The people who come to the transition programs are the ones that want to be there. And they want to show up. Even though we may get about 9 to 12 people a year, but we know for a fact that there are 10 times as many folks, young folks who are transitioning. So you have to want to be there first and foremost. And I find that those who want to finish school, go to college or have a career, those are the ones, and they're supported by their families. Those are the ones who may have a listening ear because they do want to not be defined by their disease. They want to be defined by who they are as a person and what they do and how they can contribute. So I think that's first and foremost. Are they willing? I think that when you get sick and tired of always, if you're one to go cycling through, she's no longer with us, but there was a client who we had that was in the hospital about 200, almost 300 days out of the year.
Wow.
That's a lot, okay? And that was one year, I'll never forget that. And then we worked on trying to reduce that. But the fact that I'm just saying the number 200 is already just a lot, right?
Yeah.
And then this person did have, we recommended mental health because there were some things going on as well. So maybe if they're not yet ready to be mentored, then maybe they're ready to engage in just speaking with someone, mental health. Because with mental health, you got to show up. It's not going to work unless you're in the room or on that Zoom or phone call with your counselor. And then maybe they may be open. So I think that we can get to young folks in various ways. So through mental health, through a mentor if they're ready, or even just there's a support group called the Pull Up, and it's for the young folks. And sometimes that right there, them talking to each other and others saying, you know what, yep, I go to a therapist. So, at one point, I'm hoping that for the sickle cell community, it's going to be in to have a therapist. You don't have a therapist, you're not in the in crowd. I mean, we're hoping to change that. And so by hearing other young folks talking about how it's been helpful for them, that they suffered from anxiety and now they have it under control, or that they were depressed and that they're able to manage that through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Sometimes other young folks can help, their peers be able to kind of get to that next level of managing their disease, so that they're not in as often and they have better quality of life.
Noah, just last person before we get to the closing, that can you?
I got a question for Dr. Raleigh. Why do you think that they?
Somebody's microphone is still on.
Well, I'm speaking. It looks like everybody's muted to me.
Go ahead, Nadina.
Why do you think that they don't want to be mentored? I mean, not that they don't want to be. What do you think the barrier is as to why they won't seek it?
Well, let me stop you right there. Noah, can you answer that question for Nadina? It's good to ask somebody, but yeah, if you can mute your, yeah, can you answer that?
Yes. Let me turn off this other background noise. Okay, bear with me. I think it's just a matter of, we go through so much pain, and then there's sometimes a callus that you build up when sometimes people experience so many offenses and hurts. And some of us don't read enough. Some of us don't have the families that read and take information. So it just takes a lot to block the, I want to say, like the pride and everything I may get in front of us to just receive and apply the goodness that we're getting. So I think that's really it. It's just that sometimes their experiences, their traumas, their locations can prevent them from receiving the love and the help.
Okay, because I rack my brains all the time, Noah, and everybody on the line about ways to engage the clients, a way to get them to come into the light and be seen, and just be open to the services or to what we have to offer, and just know that that's why we're here. That's why the CBOs are, why there are community-based organizations, because we want to work with the clients to get them the resources and services that they need. But if they don't come out, and you can't, it's like pulling teeth sometimes. So thank you, Antoine, for bringing Noah in, because yeah, we're just trying to figure out, I ask this all the time of everyone, how do we get them engaged? What can I do? So if you come up with any ideas or any applications, Noah, please share them, because there are a lot of them will come. I mean, I've talked to a lot of clients, but there's a host of clients out there that, we keep reaching out every month, trying to just get them to get on the phone, and we're doing a check-in and an update to see how things are going. Do you need anything? What can we do to help?
Yeah.
So just always
we're not an unbiased organization.
No. with everybody that you know. That's why sickle cell anemia awareness is here. And you know, sickle cell 101, all of us, you know. So I just want to work with, I want everybody to work together, the clients to work with us.
So since we're not an unbiased organization, I want to
Thank
bring
you.
in a female perspective if we can. Christelle, do you have an opportunity just to kind of give your feedback around the same thing that Noah answered? Christelle, you still there? Yeah.
Yes, I actually had to step away for a few minutes right when you started asking your question. Can you repeat it for me, please?
Nidina?
My question was, how do we get clients engaged? How do we get them to come out of the dark into the light?
Specifically the young ones.
Such a good question. I think that it's gonna start from a place of meeting people where they're at, and maybe not expecting them to like make a jump. I think generationally, like things are different. Like you were saying, Wanda, how you like having pen and paper, and I like having pen and paper, but I also like having my iPad with my Apple Pencil. And I know I scroll on Instagram, and that's where I get a lot of information from the world, which is not the best. But I know that's a place, that's an avenue for us to reach people. And I think the younger community, it's understanding what makes them tick, understanding what brings them excitement, understanding the best ways that they like to receive and understand information, and meeting them where they're at. And if we start from there, then we can develop a sort of camaraderie and trust building where it's like, okay, now challenge you. Like now that you're recognizing that we're family, now that you're recognizing that we have your best interest in mind, like there's a mutual best interest of us. At that point, it's like, okay, like let's hit on the pain points that are maybe a little more challenging to come to an agreement on, but understanding that it's all coming from a place of love, because I started from a place of, like you said, no, compassion, understanding, showing them why it's going to be important to start now. So that's my perspective.
Dinah?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback what everyone said. I work with palliative care, and I see a connection with the resistance of an older person and the resistance with the younger person. And I feel my perspective and bringing and bridging them forward is just valuing what it is that they value and asking them their importance and how they see their relationship with their condition. What are the things they would like to do? And how can they not do it if they're neglecting their health, right? So just on this spectrum, just understanding what it is that they value. And if you build that connection and if you allow them to remove some of the barriers and obstacles, they can actually come into realization that their value is resonating with health, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense. And see, and that's what I want them to recognize, their value. They're so valuable and so important. The clients, they just,
If I can piggyback off that really quickly, I think too, it's so important that you guys mentioned value, because I think that it didn't just start from I came out the womb not valuing myself. There is a narrative that was picked up at some point. And for me, like I got to a place where I necessarily was, not that I didn't want to help myself, but I was tired of putting in the effort to help myself, because everywhere I went, I was being told I was not valued. By going to the hospital and waiting 30 hours to get any sort of medication was an indication to me that I didn't matter. And so then why am I out here busting my chops, trying to do the right thing and drink my water and not go out dancing, when at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I'm on my best behavior, I will go somewhere where I will be determined as not valued. So being able to come from a place of, and not just like there might be things underlying that we need to address and provide a safe space for healing from, in order for people to truly see that there is something worth fighting for. And even though it takes a little bit of work on their end, and maybe not other people are doing the same thing, that it is worth putting in the work and making the changes.
Awesome.
thank you, Crystal.
Definitely. Wanda, getting back to you. Girl, thank you so much for this presentation. Any closing remarks that you have?
No, I'm glad that we had an opportunity to share. It's all good.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I just wanted to make sure that I go through this before we leave. Once again, everybody heard, if they were at a part of the initial set of this session, we have gained a new partnership with Cayenne Wellness. I wanted to make sure that we continue to pump them. If you guys see my screen, like we said, we are trying to do our best to share as much information and be a provider for you as quickly as you need to. So multiple places where you can get this information. You guys can see on my screen, Cayenne Wellness's main hub right here, where you can see about them, programs, services, events, resources, and news. And just be mindful, even though you might see something at the top of the screen right here, they're doing present work. So all you got to do is just inquire. And you got the contact us page if you ever want a point in time where you want to be a part of this, or you want to, get a clear vision of this. There's people that you can connect with. For the SCAASE portion in Northern California, the people that produced this particular presentation, you can also go to our website, www.scaasf.org. Just so that you know, Carolyn, we will have that prompt on the recording. So when people watch it, they'll be able to see visually, and they can write it down what the website URL is. But for us as well, you can see about us, some of our programs, news and events and resources. For those that are looking on, here is our YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed to this, but you actually try to get some of your content through YouTube, you can go to the YouTube platform. You can type in SCAASF, and it'll give you a toggle where you can find our thumbnail. You can see our big logo right here, and you can see our home videos. As you noticed, the beautiful Carolyn Rowley did a mental health session for us last year in 2023, and it's still up there. One of the youth that spoke to us just a minute ago, Christelle Solomon, she did a presentation for us on gene therapy. There's going to be something really exciting coming in 2024 around that will hopefully have her give us just a slight information about in the later sessions that we have in February and in March. If you would like to follow us, we are here at SCAA on Instagram. You go to Instagram platform, you just put in SCAASF, and you will find a lot of pictures and information about what we've done. We like to make sure that we take some of the shorts from our presentations each month and post snippets on our YouTube channel. I mean, on our Instagram page, as well as our TikTok, so that you guys can kind of get some snippets of it, introduce it to other people that are in your network or community, and it might entice them to want to go to the YouTube page and look at the entire video. Last but not least, make sure that you guys are doing your best to continue to support this community. We are going to continue to fight tirelessly to make sure that you guys know that you're being supported in some form or fashion. But just remember, we will see you guys next month and continue to support. Thank you guys for joining us today. That is the end of our session. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, and it was our pleasure. And the date for the next one is February 10th. And Adrienne Shapiro will be presenting on her advocacy and empowerment program. That she hosts, that they have at Access Advocacy. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.